So now what we're going to do is we've completed the eyes, and so you'll see here, we'll turn these on. And now we're going to move on to the nose and the mouth. And I know right now they look very awkward, but you'll see eventually that what we'll end up doing is we'll have a nose and a mouth, still looking awkward, correct? And then what we'll move to after that will be hair. And then we start putting them together. And then on that point, what we'll do is basically have a croquis that you can layer your designs on top of. So you would come in and add layers, and then you would do your designs. You can turn your designs on and off, whatever you need to do, but basically this is the foundation of going forward. And as we get more advanced, what we can do is kind of take this arm off, have a layer of a different arm, so maybe this arm's swinging out this way, and if you wanted to show off a bell sleeve or something along those lines, then you could, but we'll get to that in more of an advanced class, but this is your very beginning of doing a croquis on the computer, so let's just keep it really simple with this walking pose. So let's turn off the hair, fill, and my actual outline, and eventually I'll merge these two together. And so nose and mouth, and we'll keep the eyes, what we've done, but what I would like to do is zoom in here. Let me grab my pen and get on my Cintiq. Here we go. And you'll notice here is that, okay, I've got a little kind of cheekbone accentuation here, but maybe not so much over here. If you remember from the last video when we were doing eyes, you know, I talked about the layer mask, and putting a layer mask on allows you to work non-destructively. So that way, if you needed to kind of tweak something, you could. I've kind of gone through and cleaned up some of these lines on this, so I've erased them away. I've actually gone in, and if you take your brush tool, hit your eyedropper, or if you hit your option is a shortcut, and make sure it's at 100 and 100. Up here, you can even kind of paint in on the inside a little. Let me zoom in some more for you. And then back to my brush, and you can thin out some of these lines. That would help if I got on the croquis layer. There we go. And so if you notice here, I can actually kind of thin some of these dark lines. If you don't like them, you know, get in and make this, like I said, make it something you like. So if you want these lines to be thinner, on the outside of this, obviously you're not going to use white, you're going to use the eraser. So I've got my eraser, hit E for your shortcut, it's at 100 and 100, and then you can clean up even some of these lines, and you know, I zoom in really closely, so that way I can get a nice tight edge through here. So, and then you can erase it away. So this is something that you could do to kind of get all this cleaned up. I'm going to go back to my layer mask area and kind of reshape this. So once again, you zoom in and try to get this shape going on over here. So back with my brush tool, put it on black. So I'm going to go over here and hit the default, and then hit my arrow, and make sure you're on the layer mask, and remember, you add your layer mask right here. And I'm going to come in and kind of reshape this, and it looks like it's erasing it, but all it's doing is painting a mask over it. The original is unharmed. So it's starting to kind of shape up and be a little bit of the same. Don't worry about missing the black line right now. Like I said, we can add that later. We can come back in, and honestly, when we start doing skin and you start doing some darker colors around the edges, this kind of stuff just kind of disappears. I know it's real obvious right now, but you know, don't worry too much about it at the moment. So it allows you to come in and clean things up if you need to. And let me smooth this out just a little right in here. And so get it the way you want it. And let's go. So let me zoom back out just a little, and we can get started now with the mouth. So if you remember, we have come in and get back to that layer, and we have the eye copy. What I'm going to do is hit my eraser, put it at 2020. So I'm going to hit 2 and shift 2. So it'll be a slow process of erasing this away using my bracket key on the right. I'm going to erase some of this just a little bit. I think it's just kind of too harsh. And then if you remember, this is still here, right? And I also, if you notice now, it looks kind of strange because I made her eyes bigger. Remember in the last video, I like my eyes just a little larger on my croquis. So when you turn it back on, that's kind of what happened. So what's happened on this is we're going to start doing the nose. And turning this back off, I've already kind of done a nose and a mouth for you. I want you to see how subtle this is. You are not to come in and let me take this and let me do an example. Let's get on the nose and the mouth. So let's switch this to black. You're gonna come in and go, here's her nose. It is not, don't ever do that. Don't ever do that, okay? This is just made up by shape and by value and your shading. So as we come in and start doing flesh, you can put darker flesh tones here and build up that nose. All we need is just a little bit of this to suggest it. And I haven't quite finished it. I just got it to this stage for you for this video. So, but what I would like to do is turn this off a little, add a layer. And let me see, nose demo. So I know what this is. And just kind of show you how I got there. So back to turning this on and getting my pen tool, sorry, I'm not an illustrator, getting my brush. So I hit B, I'm going to make my brush larger. And then I'm going to go to 10% of both. So up here, if you watch up here, I'm going to hit 1. My opacity goes to 10%. I'm going to hit Shift 1 and my flow goes down to 10%. It's going to be really light. Let me zoom in even more. Go back to my brush and make my brush a little smaller. And I'm just going to suggest some of this here and some of this here. And making it with my bracket key to the left, making my brush a little smaller. This is the most important part we need to get in here. Like I said, the rest can be done when we start doing the flesh and shadowing that. But I do like on mine to have a little bit of just kind of a resembling of a graphite type of shadow in here. Don't worry about this because I'm going to show you what I'm going to do next. So let me turn this off. And so we start to see this, and like I said, this is a little intense, right? So you can go back over here and grab your blur tool. And it's at 70, let me put it at 90. So I'm going to hit 9, and I'm going to start blurring this out. Make my brush a little bigger. Oops. And this will help blur. If it's not blurring as much as you want it to, then this is where you can go grab your lasso. Kind of come in here a little bit. Up here, filter, blur. Let's just do a nice Gaussian blur here. And you can play right in here. And you can see this is going to be something wonderful when we start working with color as well. And we can really do a lot of blending. So I'm going to hit OK. And then Command D to deselect the ants. And so see how it's going to leave this, which is fine. I'm going to go grab my eraser. It's still at 20/20, which is perfect. Take it down a little bit and let me just kind of lightly just smooth this in around the edges. And so it's a really simple softening technique. And if you're going to do anything around the nose, that would be all that I would want you to do. So I'm going to go back to the image and turn it on, back to my brush, which is B. Now I'm at 10 and 10, so I'm going to take it up to 2 and 2. Take my brush, make it smaller, zoom in a little, and back to my brush B. Then I'm going to just start kind of suggesting the nostrils through here. And so it's kind of like what we talked about in fashion illustration. Same thing applies, you know, just the suggestion of it. We're going to do the rest with value and shadowing. You don't need much more. And then zoom out, and we can turn her off. And so see what's starting to happen here, just the suggestion of the nose. I'm going to go back up here, back to my brush, Let me double check this. Yes, that's still on for pen pressure. Remember we talked about that in the last video. So I'm going to zoom in a little more. Back to my brush. Make it as small as I can. And then just darken it just a little. And then let up my pressure and just let it fade. Same thing through here, just a little darker. And then when we start doing color and skin, you'll really see what's going to happen. Right now we just need this guide. This is just like giving yourself a guide to follow as we do this. Even if you wanted to do a little bit like that, and you can always just kind of turn the nose off and kind of draw instinctually too. So without that, now I can kind of see that I want this a little dark. And then this will help me go forward and zoom out a little. And so now we have this. I noticed that I don't like that right here. And this is where you kind of make these decisions right through here. So I'm going to grab my eraser. And like I said, it's still at 20/20, so that's perfect. I'm just going to lightly and slowly take some of this off right now. And that's probably on the eye copy, so let's do some of that too. They're both on top of one another. There we go. And so now we're just kind of lightly suggesting this. And next thing you're going to do is the mouth. So if we go back up to nose demo and we kind of come up from the one I've already done before, you can see this, and I've come in and I've actually put more shadow on. So you can do this as we go forward. So the mouth is the same thing. Turn this one off, turn her back on. And I'm going to go back to my brush, and I'm just going to lightly kind of come in. Do not come in, and I am at 20 and 20. I'm going to give myself just a light line to follow. Pressure here makes it a little darker right in that Cupid's bow. And remember from Fashion Illustration, you know, those shapes that we built around the lips. I mean, there are no other lips that I can think of that do this as perfectly as these. So we've got our sphere here, we've got a couple of nice round spheres here. So remember those shapes. I'm not saying draw them in, but like feel them as you come in and do this. I'm going to do a light. So do not come in and just start with a heavy line on this. Slowly build it up so it's soft. I'm not saying that you can't come back eventually, but let's just keep it like this as we go. I'm going to make my brush a little larger and maybe a little shadow, and to me that's too much, so right now at least. It won't be later, but just to set this up, I'm going to go to the blur tool, make it smaller, see if that'll help me. Gonna do some of that, and then I'm gonna go 10, 10 up. Oops, move back to my brush. Let me do it again. Hit 1 for 10, shift 1 for 10, and come in. And all this is being done slowly, deliberately, lightly. You don't just jump in and draw a dark line. Do not do that, or you just kind of lose the believability of it. I'm gonna put a little shadow under her lip. You know, think about it as contouring, ladies. You know, put a little contour under your lip, right, to make your bottom lip stick out a little bit. So it's the same thing. You're just kind of contouring her face instead of your own, and you're doing it in Photoshop. And so we can start to see what's happening. So you can turn off this as you go and kind of say, okay, this is starting to happen. Now what I'm going to do is clean it up a little. Back to my brush. I'm going to take it up to maybe 30 and then a 20% flow, and take my brush, make it smaller. Also, let me zoom in. Looks like I have a little more control. Back to my brush, and now just a little bit darker outline. And notice how I'm letting it fade. Same thing here. It obviously looks extremely pixelated now, which is because I am so zoomed in. but this is going to give us a guide as we go forward. And then, like I said, you turn this off, zoom out a little, oops, you know, and you can kind of start to see if this is something you like. I want to zoom in, and now without the original, go back to my brush, make it larger, take it back to 10 and 10. Get some of this kind of filled in. Sorry, my finger keeps hitting my Wacom pen, and that menu keeps popping up. I had to readjust my pen. And then we can zoom out. So you've got a little bit of this. So what we can do is get the hair and the lips going, and right now the lips seem to be just really sticking out like a Monster High Brat doll, and I get that. That's because we don't have any more shadow anywhere else yet, so it will eventually kind of ease its way visually back into your illustration as we continue on to the steps. So what I would like for you to do is lightly suggest hair and nose next. And the beauty of this is, I mean, I'm just using Angelina's entire face, but you know, if you wanted to use Angelina's eyes and Beyonce's mouth, and who has a great nose, you know, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head, but you know, if you wanted to put someone else's nose, I mean, that's the thing, like with this, you can just kind of piece it together, but just make certain, I mean, maybe you want to bring in Brigitte Bardot's nose, how about that? So, I mean, and so you just piece all these together, just do the same thing you did with the original image, which is scale it to fit your croquis head, okay? Don't just start drawing it from the size of the drawing that you've brought in. Bring it in, scale it down into this, and don't worry too much about that we've lost the black line through here. We can put it back in as we start doing skin. This is also where if you think this is too dark and you don't want it, you can kind of come in. I see right here that it got real thin, and so what you could do if you wanted on that one is I'm going to come down and hit my croquis, and I'm going to make sure I'm on the croquis, not on the mask, but actually on the croquis itself. Zoom in and hit B for brush, and then I'm going to hit my option key, and that's a shortcut to get the eyedropper. I'm just going to kind of get the color of that line that's right there, and then just so come in on this. And we are at flow 10 and 10, so let's go up to 5 and 5. There we go. See if I can make my brush a little smaller. And maybe I want to go up to 7 now. And to me, it's always better just to build these things up than to just come in with 100% black, because it's not going to kind of transition into what already exists. And then maybe I'm going to do shift 7 now, so I have a flow and an opacity of this. And maybe go up to 9. There we go. And just kind of finish it off. And maybe if I want to hit this, grab a little darker one down here. And so you can clean all this up. And so back to here, go out. So see, nice, clean up the hip line. So anywhere you see any of that stuff, get in there and fix it, you know. It'd be no different than if you were to scan your drawing in. You're gonna have to come in and kind of tweak it and fix it to get it to work. So this is the next step in this, and get started. I know this was a quick demo, so let me turn off the nose demo. I had this one going, and if you'll notice, and we see, put them both together, turn them both on, and there you go. That actually worked really well. So having 2 layers of this. Also a trick is, let me turn off the nose demo. Remember we had done this quickly in the last video with the eyes, is that you duplicate the layer. And if I duplicate the layer and hit Command J, look at that. And all of a sudden I've got the depth I want, but I also have the depth on parts I don't want, right? So that's where you would go in on all of these, and let me zoom in. So draw what you need, and then on this one, grab my eraser, 100% both, boom, boom, and make my eraser large. And erase all of this from that one. Go to the next one. erase this because it looks like a mustache, right? I don't want all that extra shadow on this. I only want it on the mouth. And then go to the last nose copy. And get that cleaned up. Let me go back up to this top one. I may have missed some of this. Until you get it the way you want it. And now maybe I'll take some of this down from here. And if you zoom out a little, now you have your nose and your lips. And like I said, it's okay that the nose still seems to be a little lighter, because I would rather it be like this than for you to come in and do that nose line, because that is not what we're looking for. Turn this off. Sorry. Sorry. That is not what we're looking for in this. Okay. So remember, at this point, if you're happy with this, then you can merge these 3 layers together. I'm not going to do it yet because, you know, I'm not committed. So maybe I might want to change something that deals with commitment issues. So get this done, and then in the next video, what we'll do is hair. So we'll draw this first, and then we'll do a layer under it. Fill it in with white, and the reason we do that is because we need what I'm going to consider glue, because we're going to do clipping masks of color on top of it after we get her built. And what I also did, if you notice, my background is now gray at the bottom, so that way I can see the white, I can see what I'm doing. Otherwise, I would be dealing with trying to draw white on top of gray, or white on top of white, and I wouldn't be able to kind of differentiate what I'm doing. So this is a way to do that. So all right, good luck. And so when you are done, it will look like this. And then next step is we'll do hair. Okay, good luck.